I cannot even begin to explain the level of sheer unadulterated trauma my central nervous system is, like, currently trying to process right now.
Yeah, trauma is absolutely the correct clinical term here.
Right. Picture this, Snark Squad. You are out in the absolute pitch-black middle of nowhere. There's dirt everywhere. Like, in places dirt has absolutely no business being.
Oh, the dirt was aggressive.
It was. You are trapped in a giant metal box on wheels,
Yeah.
and your mother is aggressively critiquing your life choices over an open, crackling flame.
Which, to be fair, was barely a flame because we bought the wrong kind of firewood.
Literally. You guys, the wilderness is not a vibe. It is a hostile takeover of my peace, and I am still actively recovering. But we are back, and today we are diving into something even more chaotic than the great outdoors.
If that's even mathematically possible.
Exactly. Welcome back, babes. We hope you had an amazing weekend. Of course, babes, thank you for being here with us.
And I just want to say, for the permanent record, the so-called metal box you were referring to was a 30-foot recreational vehicle that I was somehow, against all logic, tasked with navigating through a dense forest.
Which was so unhinged.
A forest designed for squirrels and pine cones, okay? Not modern vehicular manslaughter.
Well, the wine is officially on deck. It has been chilling. It is aggressively poured. And babes, we are ready to spiral tonight because we officially survived the family camping trip.
Barely. And I use the term survived with, like, the heaviest of clinical asterisks. We are currently in the triage phase of our emotional recovery.
Seriously. We just spent 2 full days in the wilderness with our families, including our narcissist mothers. And babes, RV life is absolutely not for us.
Emphatically no.
I am speaking for both of us right now. We are soft girls at heart. We require high thread counts. We require ambient, flattering lighting that doesn't attract mosquitoes the size of small birds.
The insects were prehistoric.
They really were. I spent the entire weekend missing air conditioning on a deeply, deeply emotional level.
Why does camping somehow feel like manual labor?
Because it is manual labor.
Right.
You are essentially paying money to LIRP as a 19th century pioneer.
Oh my God, yes.
But, with a monthly financing plan on a fiberglass tube, if we look at this from a tactical perspective, the entire operation was a logistical failure from hour one.
It really was. We left the safety of a climate-controlled infrastructure to willingly subject ourselves to the elements. And the elements, it turns out, were deeply disrespectful.
Highly disrespect.
Saturday started beautifully, but first, we need to discuss the weather. Because my weather app lied to me, and I take that personally. It was 70 degrees, which somehow felt freezing during camping.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, in the city, 70 degrees is like a cute sundress. You're on a patio, you have an iced matcha. In the woods, it is a damp, aggressive, bone-chilling 70 degrees.
Well, that is because you are failing to factor in city heat islands, concrete reflection, and the sheer lack of a dense forest canopy blocking the sun. Okay, Mr. Science.
I mean, in the woods, 70 degrees is just Mother Nature's refrigerator setting to keep the meat fresh. You were shivering because you packed for a music festival in the desert, not a survival scenario in a damn biome.
Okay, fine. I packed for the wrong temperature. I will fully admit it. I thought I was giving cozy cabin core, and instead I was giving hypothermia chic.
Hypothermia chic is incredibly accurate.
The blankets in that RV literally became survival tools. We were rationing synthetic fleece like we were in the trenches. It made me realize that outdoorsy people are just built completely differently. Their DNA is mutated to enjoy suffering.
They are biologically distinct, yes.
But, I really tried to romanticize the experience. I stood out there freezing, looking at the trees, and I was like, but the trees are so grounding. Feel the earth.
You were vibrating, but it wasn't from the Earth's frequency. It was from clinical shivering.
Stop.
I am treating this camping trip like a literal war story. If we analyze the tactical failures of our packing list, we brought 3 different kinds of aesthetic coffee mugs, but completely forgot thermal underwear.
The mugs are cute, though.
We prioritized a charcuterie board over fire starter logs. We were outflanked by the environment immediately.
And that wasn't even the worst part. Tell the Snark Squad. Because
Yeah.
the RV setup process was absolute chaos.
I am still feeling the physical tension in my shoulders just thinking about it.
It was your first time driving an RV.
And it should unequivocally be my last. Do you understand the sheer physics involved in maneuvering a 30-foot rectangle of fiberglass?
It looked terrifying.
It felt like it was 30 feet too long. It felt like I was driving a horizontal skyscraper through an obstacle course designed by a sadist.
The sheer terror of struggling to park that thing. My stress levels were skyrocketing. We were trying to back into this tiny little patch of dirt, and everyone in the family is yelling contradictory directions at once.
Complete pandemonium.
My mom is yelling, "Turn left." Your mom is yelling, "Your other left. Watch the tree."
The sensory overload was catastrophic. You have 3 different family members aggressively pantomiming steering wheel motions from the outside, none of which align with the actual mechanical reality of a combustion engine.
And we couldn't even find the campground initially because the GPS completely abandoned us.
Oh, the GPS just gave up. It basically just showed a green blob and said, "Good luck." I almost lost my patience immediately.
We had to go explore the beach afterward just to emotionally recover. And honestly, I was emotionally overwhelmed, but I was so excited by the beach.
The beach was the only redeeming quality.
The water was crashing, the breeze was there. It was this moment of zen after the vehicular trauma.
I confess I was one inconvenience away from abandoning the RV entirely, leaving the keys in the ignition and just walking into the ocean.
No.
Yes, just letting the tide take me. It would have been a much simpler existence than trying to level a camper on a 15-degree incline.
And on top of all of this, let's not forget, we were still finishing vegetarian week during the camping trip.
The ultimate unforced error. A massive strategic blunder.
Babes, the nightmare of packing vegetarian camping food. We are trying to be healthy, we're trying to be mindful, and I am sitting there emotionally devastated watching everyone else eat thick, juicy burgers off the grill.
The aroma of charred animal fat floating through the crisp forest air while we are sitting there trying to hydrate a block of tofu.
It was psychological warfare.
It really was.
I realized in that moment that camping cuisine is basically just meat-based survival food. It's hot dogs, it's burgers, it's bacon. Nature demands meat.
It does. But we made a desperate attempt to remain committed for one final day. We survived on beach snacks and campground food chaos.
What did we even pack? We actually accidentally ended up eating, like, wealthy granola influencers out of sheer desperation. I was eating raw almonds and looking at the moon.
Very aesthetic.
Right. But I am super proud of us for surviving vegetarian week against all odds.
Well, I am still emotionally haunted by the smell of those hot dogs. I close my eyes and I see a perfectly blistered Frankfurter.
But the food wasn't the real trauma. The campfire and Seven Wars night absolutely went off the rails. It derailed entirely.
Because nothing pairs better with a toasted marshmallow than generational trauma and unresolved maternal expectations.
Exactly. Because one of our mothers decided, once again, to shade us for being dentists and not medical doctors, while we are holding sticks with marshmallows on them.
It's the precision of the passive aggression that always gets me. It's never a direct attack.
Never.
It's always wrapped in a seemingly innocent observation about someone else's child who happened to go to med school, delivered right as the graham cracker cracks.
We spiral about this all the time. We are highly educated, successful professionals. We own our own practices, and we're still getting criticized.
Never enough.
How did making s'mores somehow become an emotionally hostile activity? My mom literally said, "Oh, it's so nice you girls have the weekends off. Real doctors are always on call. Pass the chocolate." I was emotionally offended immediately.
I was trying to joke through the pain with extreme sarcasm, analyzing the breakdown of the maternal guilt trip. I looked at her and said, yes, the burden of not having to perform emergency open-heart surgery in this forest is a heavy cross to bear, mother.
Which was iconic.
But it just goes to show every family vacation basically becomes an unedited reality television episode eventually. You put people with unresolved issues in a confined space, remove their standard distractions, and it's just a countdown to an emotional detonation.
Which brings us to the perfect transition. Because speaking of messy family dynamics, unresolved emotional trauma, and pure survival mode, let's talk about the absolute chaos happening on Season 12 of 90 Day Fiancé.
Yes, please.
If we thought navigating an RV was hard, these couples are navigating an architecture of pure, unadulterated delusion.
It is a masterclass in psychological warfare, cognitive dissonance, and the total abandonment of common sense. Let's get into the mess.
Let's start with Paula and Thomas. The delusion of quantum physics. Okay, so we have Paula. She's 41, she's from Brazil, and she claims she manifested Thomas using quantum physics. She literally looks at the camera and says the universe brought them together because of her energetic vibrations.
Let's pause right there to respect the sheer audacity of misusing high-level theoretical physics to explain finding a boyfriend.
That's wild.
This isn't just a quirky personality trait, it is a textbook example of spiritual bypassing.
Wait, unpack that for me. What exactly is spiritual bypassing? I hear that term thrown around on TikTok all the time.
Yeah, so spiritual bypassing is a psychological defense mechanism. It's when someone uses spiritual beliefs, practices, or New Age catchphrases to avoid dealing with painful feelings, unresolved wounds, or in Paula's case, completely unethical behavior.
Oh, wow.
Right, instead of taking accountability for their actions, they outsource the responsibility to the universe. They use the language of enlightenment to mask highly manipulative earthly behavior.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Mm-hmm.
Because she is literally playing dollhouse with her life to justify her choices.
Well, wait, literally.
She shows the cameras that she collects these tiny, microscopic miniatures to manifest real things.
Yeah.
A tiny couch to manifest a real couch. A tiny kitchen set.
And then the absolute peak of television.
Yes, the tiny toilet.
Mhm.
And she opens the lid, and there is a tiny fake poop in it. I am in absolute awe. On one hand, I want to romanticize it because it's so quirky, but on the other hand, who buys a tiny toilet with a fake turd in it to manifest a husband?
It is an incredible visual metaphor for their relationship, honestly. But let's analytically tear down her timeline, because this is where the spiritual bypassing really shines.
Let's hear it.
She claims her thoughts have atoms, and if she puts energy into those thoughts, she builds reality. She says she wrote a letter to the universe for Gringo, and the universe magically delivered Thomas.
Right.
But then we hear from Thomas. Thomas openly admits they actually met at a beach volleyball class in Hermosa Beach 7 years ago while she was on vacation.
7 years ago, so it wasn't a sudden cosmic delivery. And here's the craziest part, babes. They become pen pals. He flies all the way down to Brazil to profess his undying romantic love for her, and she hits him with, "Oh, sorry, I have a boyfriend."
Incredible.
She had a whole entire boyfriend where she was allegedly writing letters to the universe for Thomas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is why it's not quantum physics, it's just cheating with extra steps. She used this manifestation narrative to justify keeping one relationship firmly overlapped while she tested the waters with her international backup plan.
Messy.
Very. When she finally decides to monkey branch over to Thomas, she doesn't say, "I made a calculated choice to leave my partner." She says, "The universe aligned our atoms."
The delusion.
It completely absolves her of the guilt of stringing two men along. Next time a friend tells you the universe told them to do something, look closely at who is actually benefiting from that decision.
That is so incredibly dark when you frame it that way. And then we see Thomas prepping for her arrival in L.A. This man has an empty, minimalist apartment. Yeah, I mean empty.
It's bleak.
He has a couch that looks like a flat wooden board and a tiny folding table where you have to tuck your knees into your chest to eat a meal.
Let's analyze Thomas's empty apartment because it's a major psychological red flag. He claims he's a minimalist who hates clutter. But is he a minimalist or is he just broke?
That's the real question.
The man lives in Los Angeles. He's 31. His dining room table looks like a tray you'd use for breakfast in bed, except there is no bed, just a depressing sofa. The psychology of empty spaces often reflects an avoidance of permanence. He hasn't built a life, he's just occupying a waiting room.
And he is bringing Paula, a woman whose entire identity revolves around collecting hundreds of tiny cluttered trinkets, into an apartment with the warmth of a surgical theater.
A literal blank slate.
How is she going to react to that? She's going to try to fill that empty space with 1,000 tiny dollhouse couches.
And let's not forget the dietary clash. She is a strict vegan, and he is a massive meat eater who proudly opens his fridge to show off his raw steaks. But the absolute zenith of this segment, the logistical nightmare that truly broke my brain, was Thomas preparing food to take to the airport.
Oh my God, the beans. Babes, he cooks tofu and beans for her arrival. Which, okay, thoughtful, but he packs the beans into a coffee tumbler.
A thermal travel mug.
Imagine being on a long international flight. You land, you are exhausted, you are sweating, you finally see your fiancé, and he hands you a warm coffee thermos filled with loose beans.
The sheer viscosity of beans trying to make it through the tiny plastic drinking hole of a coffee lid, it defies the laws of physics.
I can't even picture it.
It is a deeply unsettling culinary strategy. Does she sip it? Does she tip her head back and let the beans slide down her throat like a pelican eating a fish?
I am physically gagging thinking about the smell when you pop the lid off that thermos in an enclosed airport terminal.
Pure chaos.
But the craziest part, he asks her to drink the beans, and she does it. She just drinks the thermos beans. That, more than the tiny toilet, tells me they are both fundamentally strange people who might actually be perfect for each other.
I mean, they deserve each other. Moving from one unhinged welcome to another, let's pivot to Marissa and Edward, the boss CEO and the raggedy key.
Oh, this dynamic is so layered. Marissa is wealthy. She makes sure we, The viewers know she is wealthy. She proclaims herself a boss and CEO.
Constantly.
And Edward is from the Dominican Republic. He has never been on a plane before. He was so innocent and sweet on his first flight. He actually tried to keep the airplane window open because he wanted to feel the breeze.
Bless him.
And the flight attendants had to politely tell him, you can't roll the windows down at 30,000 feet. I felt deeply for him in that moment. He is completely out of his element.
He is stepping into a totally foreign environment, and waiting for him is a woman whose entire personality is built around her perceived high-status lifestyle.
Right.
She constantly brags about her $1 million home in a gated community, her expensive vacations, the fancy hotels. It's textbook conspicuous consumption.
And then Edward arrives. He crosses an ocean for love. Marissa decides to give him a welcome gift, but she says flowers or a sign are too ghetto.
Her words, not ours.
So she gives him a key to her house, except she hands him a raggedy, standard metal house key with a broken ribbon on it.
The broken ribbon was a choice.
And she admits on camera that the key doesn't even work. Her $1 million home only uses digital locks. She literally handed him a useless piece of metal just for the aesthetic. I would have gotten right back on the plane.
It is the perfect metaphor for their relationship. It looks like access, it looks like power, but functionally it does absolutely nothing. She retains total control.
Wait, I actually want to push back on that. I disagree that the key was useless.
Oh.
I don't think it was just a metaphor or a prop for TV. I think it was a highly effective psychological test.
Well, so.
It was a compliance check. She gave him a broken key, knowing it was garbage, to see if he would gratefully accept breadcrumbs. If he complains, he's ungrateful. If he smiles and takes it, she knows she has him completely under her thumb.
Wow, that is a brilliant point. It is a dominance ritual. Let's analyze Marissa's power dynamics here.
Please do.
She insists on being the dominant boss CEO. She specifically chose Edward, someone from a developing nation who works in a hotel, someone she perceives as having lower status and lower wealth because she requires control.
Exactly.
She wants to be the savior, the wealthy benefactor. Relationships built on this kind of massive power imbalance rarely survive without deep resentment.
Yes. It's all a power play.
Yeah.
She wants someone who will look up to her and be intimidated by her wealth. And that is exactly why her marriage to her ex-husband, Michael, failed.
Precisely.
Michael explicitly said on camera that her wealth and her family's affluent lifestyle made him feel like a loser. He felt emasculated because she constantly used her financial superiority as a weapon.
And speaking of Michael, the ex-husband intercepts the whole arrival process.
Right.
Before Edward even lands, Michael comes over to have a sit-down with Marissa.
Oh, that sit-down was tense.
He is fiercely protective of his 2 kids, and he is setting a firm, non-negotiable boundary. He tells her, point blank, that Edward is not to step into the dad role. He says, nobody's going to be coming for my kids.
I respected Michael so much in that moment. Marissa tries to twist it, trying to make Michael seem scary or jealous, telling the camera she's seen Michael go off, and it's intimidating.
Which was completely unconvincing.
She is desperately trying to write a script where 2 men fight over her like she's the prize in a geopolitical conflict.
But Michael is completely unbothered by her. He is utterly detached from her reality TV narrative. And let's push back on Marissa's entire boss CEO internet presence versus Michael's reality.
Okay, let's talk about the internet presence.
Marissa is on here bragging about her wealth, trying to position herself as this aspirational influencer. But if you look at the internet chatter and the actual metrics, Michael apparently has 1 million followers on TikTok for his wholesome dad skits.
Wait, really? 1 million?
Yes, he is arguably vastly more successful in the social media space than she is, and he's doing it by just being an authentic, present father. He doesn't need to put anyone down to elevate his own status.
I love that for him. Sarcastic applause for Michael setting firm boundaries and completely refusing to fall for her reality TV bait.
Good for Michael.
But if we want to talk about refusing to fall for bait, we have to talk about Debbie and Mido, the Egyptian LA Knight.
Oh boy. This situation requires a deep dive into the psychology of intermittent reinforcement because what we are watching is emotional torture disguised as romance.
Oh my gosh, yes. Debbie is waiting for Mido, who claims to be an aspiring actor from Egypt. But right before his flight to the U.S., he completely ghosted her.
Radio silent.
Goes completely radio silent. Debbie is losing her mind. She looks into changing his flight because he previously claimed his dad was sick, and changing the flight would cost $3,800.
A massive financial burden.
She texts him this, asking for clarity, and this man replies with 2 words, No comment.
No comment. It is the most arrogant, detached, chillingly narcissistic response possible to a woman who is theoretically financing your entire life transition.
I had a full emotional breakdown watching Debbie at the airport. She doesn't even know if he's on the plane. She goes to the airport anyway with her daughter.
Because she has to know.
She is so stressed, so physically consumed by anxiety that she goes into the airport bathroom and literally vomits. We hear it on the mic.
The audio was visceral.
She is throwing up from sheer panic. Babes, think about the intense anxiety of waiting for a toxic text back from a guy who is ghosting you. Your stomach drops, your chest gets tight.
We've all been there.
Now multiply that feeling by international borders, a $3,800 flight change fee, and a camera crew following you around. It is stomach-churning.
And this is exactly where intermittent reinforcement comes in.
Okay, what is that?
In behavioral psychology, B.F. Skinner did an experiment with pigeons in a box. If he gave them a pellet of food every time they hit a button, they only hit it when they were hungry.
Right.
But if he gave them food randomly, unpredictably, they became obsessed. They hit the button frantically, constantly. Vito is treating Debbie like a pigeon in a Skinner box.
Oh my.
By giving her love and then suddenly withdrawing it and ghosting her, he creates a psychological addiction. She is vomiting in that bathroom because her nervous system is going through literal withdrawal from his unpredictable validation.
That explains so much. She is addicted to the anxiety loop, so she waits. And she waits for an hour and a half after the flight lands.
Just sitting there.
She is sitting there, hives breaking out on her neck, crying, thinking he stood her up, and then he just casually strolls down the stairs like he's walking a red carpet. Surprise.
I want to analyze this surprise arrival. Realistically, an hour-and-a-half delay at international customs is completely standard.
Yeah, totally normal.
But him pretending it was a deliberate, orchestrated surprise, that screams of a producer-driven stunt, or just his own sadistic need to maximize Debbie's emotional torture. He wanted her broken down so she would be pathetically grateful when he finally appeared.
And his immediate reaction upon seeing the woman who just vomited out of fear of losing him, he doesn't apologize. He doesn't hold her. He asks, "Did you inform Will Smith and Tom Cruise that I'm here?"
The sheer, unadulterated delusion of grandeur. He is an aspiring actor. And in the entertainment industry, aspiring is simply a polite synonym for unemployed.
Honestly.
He thinks he is walking into Hollywood as a peer to Tom Cruise, when in reality, he's walking into a highly toxic, codependent relationship with a woman who will hold his green card over his head for the rest of his natural life.
She tells him she threw up from stress, and he just glazes right over it. He completely ignores her physical suffering.
Didn't even acknowledge it.
And then the producers ask him to show off his acting skills right there in the airport.
Yeah.
And he decides to do the iconic Robert De Niro monologue from Taxi Driver. "You talking to me?"
Let's do a dramatic reading of his specific rendition because it was breathtakingly bad. "Are you talking to me? I will be back."
Yeah.
If you read history, nothing impossible in this life.
How would you grade that performance objectively? Because I was cringing so hard, my spine fused together.
Brutally. It is an F-. It was community theater level delusion. But more importantly, it was a complete misread of the cultural zeitgeist.
Almost so.
He is regurgitating a line from a 1976 movie about an alienated, violent taxi driver, thinking it makes him look like a leading man. It just makes him look deeply out of touch.
He is so arrogant. He thinks he is God's gift to cinema. But you know who else I'm struggling to handle? Mallory. Let's talk about Mallory and Rasset, the financial demands and the strictly dickly dog sitter.
A phrase that truly belongs in the Smithsonian.
Mallory is in Turkey visiting Rasset before they fly to the U.S., and they partake in this Turkish tradition where they drink salt coffee. It represents surviving bitter times in a marriage. Rasset drinks it, and it is disgusting.
I actually respect the cultural symbolism of the salt coffee. It acknowledges that marriage requires enduring discomfort, but logistically, ingesting hot salt water is a fantastic way to induce immediate, aggressive dehydration.
I was horrified. I was gagging along with him. But the real bitterness is their actual relationship. Let's talk about Brandon.
Brandon.
Mallory has this guy friend, Brandon, back in the U.S., and she casually drops to the cameras that they used to be friends with benefits, strictly physical. But she fiercely defends keeping him around, and her reason is intense. A few years ago, she was in a horrific car accident.
We have to acknowledge the absolute severity of this medical trauma. She stated she lost 3 feet of her intestines. That is catastrophic physical trauma.
Unimaginable.
The recovery from a bowel resection of that magnitude takes months, if not years.
Absolutely, viscerally traumatic. And while she was in the hospital recovering from this life-altering surgery, Brandon stepped up and took care of her dogs.
Okay.
He saved the dogs. He was there for her in her absolute darkest hour when she had nobody else. So I completely defend her attachment to him. You do not cut off the person who kept your fur babies alive while you were fighting for your life in the ICU. Trauma bonds like that are permanent.
I hear that, but I am going to switch sides here and analyze this from Rasset's perspective because we are dealing with competing validities.
Okay, let's hear it.
I am defending Rasset's completely valid jealousy. Mallory is using her very real trauma as a shield to justify incredibly poor relationship boundaries. You cannot bring your strictly dickly ex-sexual partner around your traditional Turkish fiancé and expect him to just applaud the dog sitting.
But she can't just abandon a friend who saved her.
True, but she needs to understand the cultural context she is marrying into. Rasset comes from a culture with strict gender boundaries, where men and women don't casually hang out like that, let alone with former sexual partners.
That's fair.
Mallory is completely invalidating his normal cultural and relational boundaries by insisting Brandon will remain a major, ever-present part of her life. She's demanding he assimilate completely to her American, hyper-individualistic view of friendship while offering zero compromise.
I get that. It's a massive cultural clash. But fine, let's pivot to the money issue because this is where it gets incredibly messy and where I actually have some genuine questions.
The money is always where it falls apart.
Rasset's family suffered through the devastating 2023 earthquake in Turkey. Their home was destroyed, and they are literally currently living in a tent, a shipping container.
A terrible situation.
So his family pulls him aside and asks if he will be able to send money back to help them when he goes to America. Specifically, 10,000 lira a month, which translates to about $218.
And from a purely mathematical standpoint, $218 a month is practically a rounding error in the grand scheme of an American household budget. It is a utility bill. It is a couple of dinners out.
Right.
But we must analyze the timing and the execution of this request.
He waits until they are in the Uber on the way to the airport to bring this up to Mallory. He tells her he wants to send the money, but he legally can't work. Wait, I actually want to ask you about this because I don't fully understand the immigration law here.
Let's break it down.
Why is it entirely on Mallory to pay this? How restrictive is this K-1 visa legally?
It is incredibly restrictive, and it structurally creates massive power imbalances. Under the K-1 Fiancé visa, the foreign national cannot legally work in the United States until they get married, file for adjustment of status, and receive an employment authorization document.
So he literally can't get a job.
Exactly. That process can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months, sometimes longer. During that entire period, the American sponsor, which is Mallory, is legally and financially responsible for 100% of the immigrant's living expenses. Rasset literally cannot earn a single dollar to send to his family without violating federal immigration law.
Okay, so that explains why she feels the pressure. She snaps at him in the Uber, saying she has a mortgage, a car payment, and that Americans aren't as rich as foreigners think. Her reaction is explosive. She acts like this $218 will completely bankrupt her.
You do not drop a financial recurring subscription on your fiancé in the back of an Uber on the way to the airport. That is a conversation you have at a dining table with an Excel spreadsheet, not while your luggage is rolling around in the trunk. However, Mallory's reaction to feeling financially used lacks severe empathy. She claims her paycheck is gone the second it hits her bank account. She is centering her own mild financial anxiety while completely ignoring the objective reality that his parents were literally sleeping in a tent in an earthquake disaster zone.
It is so incredibly dark.
Yeah.
Now, before we go any deeper into Mallory's reaction, we have to address the internet chatter because the Snark squad has been sending us links all week.
Let's deploy the mandatory impartiality note right here.
Yes, please.
We are stepping out of our personal opinions and strictly reporting the data that is circulating in the fandom. We are not taking sides. We are not endorsing any political views, left or right. We are just neutrally reporting what the sources say is happening online.
Exactly. There are widespread online rumors, mentioned heavily in the recaps and forums, that Mallory is an alleged Mézières person who actively supports deportations and strict border control on her personal social media accounts.
Which, the internet commentators point out, creates a stark irony given she's utilizing the K-1 visa immigration process to bring a foreign national into the country. Again, we are impartially reporting the existence of these rumors to provide full context on why the fan base is reacting so strongly to her demanding financial control over Russet and complaining about the cost of his immigration.
Okay, stepping back into the relationship drama, the tension in that car ride was suffocating. Let's move to Kentucky and talk about Shay and Annabelle. Paducah redneck vibes and $20 biscuits.
The culture shock here is palpable. It is a collision of two entirely different sociological frameworks.
Annabelle arrives in Paducah, Kentucky from the Philippines. Shay gives her a tour of the house, and they walk into the bedroom, and babes, there are taxidermy deer heads mounted on the walls.
Unsettling.
Right above where you sleep.
Dead, glass eyes staring at you while you attempt to achieve REM sleep.
I viscerally reacted to this. Soft girls cannot sleep under dead animals, period. It is bad feng shui. It is terrifying. It is absolutely unacceptable. She is horrified.
And she's also experiencing massive culture shock because she's never seen an electric oven before. They only use gas cooktops back home.
But the real drama, the underlying structural issue, starts the next morning over something so trivial.
The biscuit warfare.
Yes. She's adult daughter, Allison, who lives right next door on the property, comes over with her kids. The house is a mess, dog hair everywhere. And as Allison is leaving, she casually gives her a $20 bill so she can take her kids to get Sunday biscuits after church. Innocent enough? Right. Wrong. Annabelle throws an absolute fit.
Let's analyze the cultural clash here, because it's not actually about the $20. It is about the sociological difference between individualism and collectivism.
Break that down.
Annabelle comes from the Philippines, a highly collectivist culture deeply rooted in filial piety. She explicitly states that in her culture, once children are adults, the financial flow reverses.
Right.
The adult children are supposed to provide for their elders, pay rent, and care for the parents.
Right. She views Shay giving his adult daughter $20 as a sign that Allison is leeching off of him, especially since she lives next door rent-free. Annabelle is appalled that the financial flow is going from the elder down to the adult child.
But from Shay's perspective, he operates in an individualistic American framework. He's just being a Southern dad giving his grandkids a little treat money for a pastry.
Exactly.
He doesn't view it as systemic financial abuse. He views it as a grandfatherly gesture. However, from a tactical reality TV perspective, Annabelle is making a massive, catastrophic error.
She really is. She is in the country for less than 48 hours, and she decides to pick a fight over a $20 bill with a woman the sources describe as a boss hen and a bully.
Allison is the apex predator of that property. You do not challenge the boss hen over biscuit money on day one. You smile, you nod, and you wait until the ink on the marriage certificate is dry before you audit the family finances.
Right.
By attacking the daughter immediately, Annabelle has painted a target on her own back. She doesn't understand the complex family ecosystem she just walked into.
It is a rookie mistake. She just declared war on a woman who lives 50 feet away. You do not survive long in reality TV by isolating the family matriarch on day 2.
You really don't.
Finally, let's touch on Katie and Josh. The hangover ultimatum.
A rare moment of actual psychological boundary setting on this network.
Katie wakes up incredibly hungover. We're talking blackout level. She can't remember the night before after doing rounds of tequila shots. She is laying in bed, looking rough, and she blames her memory gaps and her intense anxiety on her OCD.
Which is highly suspect.
Though the fan community heavily suspects she might have Tourette's due to her visible ticking, which she seems to mislabel as OCD to excuse her behavior.
Whatever the actual medical diagnosis might be, using a neurological or psychiatric condition as a blanket excuse for blacking out on tequila is a deeply manipulative strategy. She is trying to medicalize her poor decisions to avoid accountability.
I do have to empathize with the Sunday scaries or the anxiety of waking up and not knowing who you offended. We have all had messy wine nights where you wake up and have to check your text messages with one eye closed.
We've all been there.
I relate to that pit in your stomach, but I acknowledge it is very dark when it's happening right before a pending marriage.
I analytically praise Josh here. He sits her down, looks her in the eye, and says her feral party girl lifestyle must end if they are going to get married and have kids.
He did not hold back.
He is the only person on this entire show who has demonstrated an actual enforceable boundary. He identified a toxic behavior, he didn't scream, he didn't throw a fit, he just calmly stated, "This stops now, or we do not proceed." It's refreshing to see someone refuse to participate in the architecture of delusion.
It is. Okay, we have untacked the couples, we have analyzed the mess, and now it is time to transition to our favorite part of the show. Speaking of our own absolute inability to survive the wilderness, It's time for segment 1. Who would fail camping first?
A hypothetical survival analysis of our cast member.
Which cast member would absolutely not survive one single night in an RV or a tent?
Oh.
I am immediately arguing for Paula, the quantum physics manifestation queen.
Oh, she would last an hour.
She would step into the woods, see a raccoon, and try to manifest a Marriott out of a pine cone. She would bring a tiny miniature plastic tent, set it on the dirt, and expect the universe to instantly enlarge it into a glamping yurt. She would not last 3 hours without a Wi-Fi connection to order more tiny poop toilets.
Paula is a strong contender, but I am arguing for Marissa, the boss CEO. Imagine Marissa in a state park.
Oh my gosh.
She would demand to speak to the manager of the woods because the trees don't have digital locks. She would try to fire a park ranger for not carrying her Louis Vuitton luggage.
She literally would.
And let's not discount Mito. Mito would stand in the middle of a dense forest doing his De Niro impression at a squirrel, asking if the grizzly bears were informed by Tom Cruise that he is a famous actor. He would be eaten immediately simply because his ego would prevent him from running away.
That is such a vivid and terrifying image. A bear eating an aspiring actor mid-monologue. Okay, moving on to segment 2. Biggest relationship red flag.
Let's do it.
The woods are full of red flags, but so are these relationships. What is the messiest romantic behavior of the episode? I insist, with everything in me, that the biggest red flag is Mitoto's no comment text.
It was brutal.
Debbie is literally vomiting in an airport bathroom from stress, and this man sends no comment about a $3,800 flight change. It shows a complete psychopathic lack of empathy.
It is a masterclass in manipulation, yes. It is the intermittent reinforcement we discussed earlier. However, I counter with Mallory.
Okay, let's hear the counter.
Keeping Brandon, the strictly dickly dog sitter, permanently hovering in her orbit and then gaslighting Resset when he expresses completely normal cultural discomfort. Yeah. Or how about Paula hiding an entire living, breathing boyfriend when Thomas flew to Brazil to declare his love?
That was wild.
That is not quantum physics. That is not the atoms of the universe aligning. That is just cheating with extra steps and hiding behind New Age spirituality to avoid accountability.
The absolute mess. Segment 3. RV life versus soft girl life. We can laugh at them, but let's be real. We were basically in our own reality show this weekend.
Right.
Why do camping and luxury absolutely not mix?
They are mutually exclusive.
I kept relating Annabelle's horror at the dead deer heads to my sheer horror of waking up in a 70-degree RV without a heated blanket.
Yeah.
Soft girl life requires a minimum of 3 throw pillows, climate control, and a bedside table for my water glass. The wilderness provides none of those things.
Or none.
The wilderness provides dirt, suffering, and an acute awareness of your own mortality.
Let's compare the logistics of Marissa trying to digitally lock her mansion to the sheer mechanical nightmare of trying to park an RV. Marissa wants seamless digital aesthetic control. An RV requires you to manually crank stabilizing jacks in the mud while your family screams at you. Nature is a fundamentally hostile environment, and so is a campground with no Wi-Fi. You are forced to confront your own inadequacies without the buffer of modern convenience.
Which brings us perfectly to segment 4, family vacation horror stories. And if the elements don't get you, your family will. The most chaotic moments families have caused on trips, I immediately bring it back to our campfire drama.
The marshmallow incident.
The emotional warfare of moms comparing careers over marshmallows. It perfectly relates to Shay's daughter Allison and the $20 biscuit fight. Family dynamics instantly ruin the piece.
Instantly.
You think you're going on vacation to relax, but really, you were just relocating your family's unresolved arguments to a new geographic coordinate.
It is a geographical shift of dysfunction. I connect Marissa's protective ex-husband Michael to every aggressive dad on a family vacation who treats the itinerary like a military operation.
On the dads with the itineraries.
We are going to the museum at 0800 hours, and nobody is allowed to use the bathroom until 1100. If you don't have an ex-husband threatening your new fiancé, or a dad screaming over a printed map, do you even have a family? It is the friction that binds us.
It truly is the friction that binds us. Well, babes, we have spiraled, we have deeply analyzed the architecture of delusion, and we have trauma-dumped our camping trip onto you.
We really did.
Thank you to the Snark Squad for hanging out with us through all this mess. We appreciate you so much for going on this journey with us.
And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can keep funding our expensive wine habits. It is the only way we will survive the inevitable next camping trip.
Stay messy, stay cozy, and we will see you on the Snark side. But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over while you sip your own wine.
What's that?
If Paula really can manifest physical objects with her tiny miniatures, What is stopping her from manifesting an actual personality for Thomas? Think about it. See you next week.